This is the Yamaha R9. It's the most anticipated motorcycle of the last decade, with more speculation and rumors than old Jeffrey's Island. I'm gonna get this motorcycle out on road, on track, and in the studio to give you the most comprehensive view of this machine. I bought this motorcycle using my own funds, and it's a giveaway bike on yammynoob.co. Click the link down below and find out how you can get entered to win. Now let's swing a leg and go for a ride.
All right, swinging a leg over the Yamaha R9. I've been wanting to say that for a very long time. The first thing you notice when you swing a leg over this bike is it's a pretty substantial machine, man. It's kind of wide, it's kind of fat. It certainly sits somewhere between an R1 and an R6. The old R6 had a lot of plastics around here too, and this bike is no different. The Yamahas are kind of wide. I would have expected if we lopped off a cylinder, maybe got a little more narrow like my old favorite Daytona 675, but it is not. It's a nice fat bike. We'll go ahead and turn her on, shall we? Put her in neutral. Tried and true CP3 comes to life. We'll give her a rev, already warm. Not much of a revver, but lots of torque down low. This motorcycle has a 32.7-inch seat height. I'm about 5'11", and you guys can see that my legs are slightly bent. I can have my feet flat on the ground, side to side like this. It is a pretty substantial bike. Leaning over here, it's a pretty committed, aggressive ergonomics riding position. So a bit of a dichotomy already with the street bike style, but an aggressive sport bike frame. Want to go ahead and click it into first gear, see what she'll do. Pulling away with the R9, and you feel that cable actuated clutch, and that is actually the last time you will use it unless you come to a stop again, because the R9 does come equipped with, as you can see here, the same bi-directional quick shifter that the old MT-09 comes with, and it works beautifully, man. Yamaha's quick shifters are some of the best in the biz. I've really enjoyed how they've made them better and better, and I think they definitely compete with Ducatis, which I think are some of the best in the bunch. So the R9's a bit of a strange bird, man. It's a bike that has a lot of super sport energy. The first time I rode this machine, I was kind of like, man, it's soft, it's kind of fat, you know, because it really does feel like a fat, torquey R6. But then you lean it over like this, and oh man, it's got the super sport DNA. It feels like a Yamaha R bike. The gas tank is flat, it's wide. It feels like you can charge through corners and attack with this thing. But man, in second gear, you do have that dreaded dead spot, man. The ECU is very limited in that way, meeting compliance for noise in North America. Much like the ZX4RR, this is a motorcycle that you're absolutely gonna have to go and get flash in order to feel what it can really do. So I would recommend, if you're riding around a bone stock R9, keep it in third gear. Third gear feels linear and good. It's only second gear and maybe first as well. I haven't experimented that it has that weird like down low dead spot. On track, it's not a big deal. So unlike the R6, you have a motor that is crazy torquey, so willing from basically any RPM to give you speed and performance. There's actually been many times I've been riding this motorcycle and I end up going way faster than I think I'm supposed to, because I'm going off of the sound of the motor, clicking through the gears, and I look down and I'm like, whoa, I'm doing damn near 3 times the speed limit. It's pretty deceptive in how it builds speed. If you're used to a 600 and you want to hear those revs and like that's your measure for speed, this really doesn't do that. When I first got on this bike, I kind of thought to myself, oh man, like it's really soft and the throttle doesn't really feel that great. And then I remember the Yamaha equips this thing with a ridiculous amount of rider aids and electronic controls and changes, so I dialed it into my preferred street setting here. I've got it mapped basically to the sport mode with the TC turned down a little bit more, and I think wheelie control on its most limited setting, and I find that that works pretty well. The throttle is a little bit more neutered than it has been in the past. The old CP3 platforms had a cable actuated throttle. That hasn't been the case for several years now, but this motorcycle certainly feels quite nice. From 0 throttle to sort of 5%, that initial pickup, it's got a great amount of performance and punch. You know, 117 horsepower and 69 foot-pounds of torque is quite a bit for the street, especially if you know what you're doing and how to use it. I find this bike works well in tight twisties, long sweepers. It's a pretty nice bike to ride almost everywhere. I think one of the main elephants in the room with a bike like this is Does it feel special enough? Or does it feel like a parts bin special? And I kind of have a hard time justifying this machine over an MT-09 SP, particularly because the naked bikes have become so freaking good in the last couple of years, man. The new MT-09 is just an absolute weapon of a bike. And although this motorcycle does feature quite a few critical changes that we're going to talk about later in this video that separate it from the MT-09, on road, I would be hard-pressed to find a street rider that can extract more performance from this than the MT-09 SP. Where this bike really shines is its character, its charm, and its ability to give you that kind of look-back factor. It's a fully fared Yamaha R-bike, myself included. It appeals to a lot of people. It tugs on heartstrings. It makes people think of Valentino Rossi, the YZR M1, you know, all the good stuff from all the good old days of Yamaha. And this bike is no different. It's got a really sharp front end for what it is, even in street form like this. But look at that second gear dead spot. You click it up into third and it just shoves away. Even with the same throttle input, it's very peculiar how it does that. Yeah, it's got to get flashed, man. That's got to be the first thing you do on a Yamaha R9. Look at this. That's crazy. With the same throttle input, it completely changes when you click it up into third gear. That definitely should not happen. Brakes on the R9 are really solid. You're working with the brand new Brembo Stylema calipers. These are very, very good equipment that we haven't really seen on a Yamaha R bike. You know, the past generation R6 and R1 suffered from some pretty wooden feeling brakes, such that you had to pretty much upgrade, especially if you were going to go on track. Now that you have a real set of calipers, a real master cylinder on this thing, it's pretty sweet, man. In terms of stiffness and comfort, you know, this is a sport bike. I don't think anyone should be expecting this and riding it in super complete comfort. And honestly, I know that Yamaha say that they have relaxed the rider triangle a little bit, and it has been a while since I've ridden a proper, you know, R6 or something like that on road. But to me, this feels just about as aggressive as an old school sport bike. This doesn't really register to me as more comfortable or meaningfully more comfortable over something like an R6. I'll go ahead and romp on the R9 a bit here. Got a really aggressive rev limiter, as you can see there. Comes in really strong at 10.5. Now, tuners have been telling me that you can get this thing to rev out to 11.5 using just ECU mapping. You don't need to drop a different set of cams to get it to do 11.5. And that's the thing I was saying about the MT-09 versus this bike and that kind of parts bin special. You know, a sport bike that redlines at 10.5 that feels this aggressive, man, it's a bit of a head shake, you know? It's a bit of a weird, wonky thing. On the one hand, I love having the extra shove basically everywhere in every RPM. It feels awesome. But on the other hand, when I rev it out, I feel like I'm missing something. Because everything else is telling me that I should hear, you know, that final bit of RPM. Maybe it's because I am a Daytona 675R enjoyer for many, many years, and when I ride a committed riding stance like this with the triple cylinder soundtrack, I kind of wait until that final, you know, couple thousand RPM, the harmonics kind of change, you feel it increase in pitch, get that final little squeeze of power. And that's where this bike doesn't quite deliver. The build quality really shines through on this machine, though. Yamaha's not going to build some really crappy R bike. They're not going to put the R bike moniker on something really cheap and chintzy feeling, unless you buy an R3 nowadays. But that's a different story. It's the entry-level category. I think that they tried really hard to put some really cool refinements on this and try to make it as premium upmarket as possible. And I think it delivers pretty decent value for money. Cruise controls fitted at standard, 6-axis IMU, TFT display, quick shift up and down. It is a pretty premium riding experience at a not so premium price tag, which is pretty sweet. Boy, as a road bike though, it carves beautifully. It's so nice to ride on road. It kind of gives you that really classic sport bike feeling on road that you don't really get nowadays unless you go buy some old clapped out 600. It really is a beautiful thing side to side on road. I love picking it up and feeling it lean over. It's lovely. If you're into riding more athletically, you want to, you know, get in the pocket, use the core of your body. If you got beautiful canyons around you, this is a pretty sweet bike to do it, man. This thing's pretty awesome. The look out of the cockpit's really cool too. You have the pretty upmarket KYB front fork. It's got high and low speed compression and rebound adjusters separate in the forks. It looks like an R1 fork. It looks really nice and premium. The triple tree up here has the cutouts like a MotoGP bike. It is a pretty cool and premium experience in this machine. I really, really dig it. One thing that I don't dig as much is the crazy Yamaha turn indicator and cluster system over here. I love that I get cruise control as standard. That's a great touch on this bike, but holy moly, this pod over here is one of the biggest things I've ever messed with, and they did not need to reinvent the wheel with the indicators here. This is just like, they're self-canceling but also not sometimes, and I just miss the tried and true format of turn indicators. Call me crazy, but I think we figured that one out. Going over a couple of speed bumps with the Yamaha R9, this motorcycle is highly tunable from a suspension perspective. You've got high and low speed compression front and rear, rebound front and rear, preload front and rear obviously, and they're pretty high quality units. And you know, even though the frame is pretty darn stiff, it's relatively manageable if you put it in the standard setting for the suspension on road. It's not a super punishing bike to ride, and it does run pretty cool. It's a pretty hot day here in Austin, and I'm actually sitting under 200 degrees on the coolant indicator on the dashboard, which is pretty awesome. It is a rapid little bike, and one of the best parts about this machine over the R6 is it is so good on the highway in that kind of like 70 to 100 territory, man. This bike absolutely rips with that because it just effortlessly pulls from sort of 70 to 110 miles an hour. It doesn't even matter what gear you're in, 6th, 5th, 4th. I mean, 4th is probably the best one to do. But it just pulls so nice, just everywhere. You know, you click it down here, you're doing 50, and you just crank a little bit, and you're already going much faster. You don't have to wait for anything. And that's where a more street-biased engine really comes into play. It's super, super nice the way it can do that. So the Yamaha R9 is a pretty solid contender for a street bike, but unfortunately, we're not able to truly test its performance on road. Why don't we head over to the track and see what this thing can do? And here we are on track, enjoying the Yamaha R9, cooking into the braking zone here. The first thing I got to tell you guys about how this bike performs on track is, unfortunately, the stock equipment that Yamaha put on this motorcycle, which is the S22 tire. It's been a long time since I've used an S22 on track. Last time was in 2021 with the Yamaha R7. And on the R7, it makes a little bit more sense. It's a, you know, pretty friendly street-going motorcycle with not a lot of torque. And I was a little slower back then. Nowadays, you know, former club racer, expert level pace. And I just find this tire not suited to this motorcycle. I've struggled with grip all day. And it's just a little hard to ride. And I've had to nurse this bike a little bit. Just had to manage the grip and think about the grip a little bit more than usual. So that's the first thing I think about it, because the tires are the most important part. The next bit is this dead spot in the rev range. It's not as noticeable on track because you're higher up in the revs. Notice that smear that we get. Point it over here. We'll crank it over here on the straightaway. Rev limiter comes in at right around 10,500 RPM. Got an all-one blitzing fastness. And those race prep bikes will leave you behind on the R9. You got to think about that. But as an intermediate rider, you know, someone who's just enjoying some track days, this bike is going to work really well for you. For those of us who are a little bit more discerning, you want fast pace, you want righteous super sport feelings, this base setup needs a bit of work. I've got the suspension dialed into my liking today. I put the tires to the correct PSI. But ultimately, like any track or race application, you're going to have to really think about the, you know, setup on the machine. So, new master cylinder, proper suspension setup, maybe a new, ooh, look at that squirm, jeez, dude. Just the baseline level things to make this motorcycle be a little bit more confidence inspiring, because that's what it doesn't really have right now. I think it doesn't provide a lot of confidence in bone stock trim for those of us who are riding at a little bit more of an advanced pace. I've ridden Lots of bone stock motorcycles on track here, and some perform better than others, and this R9 just leaves a little bit to be desired in stock trim. You guys will notice I'm not carrying that much speed through here. I'm being very cautious, very judicious, because these S22s are not giving me the feedback that I can push much harder than what I'm doing right now. The front end wants to fold, the rear is sliding a little bit. On a lot of the press reviews I saw of this motorcycle that took it out on track, they were actually riding on slicks. So that obviously is going to make a really big difference. If you get this motorcycle, change the tires immediately for track day use. That's what I'll tell you right now. Quick shift down works beautifully though as I go down into first there. Grab a gear up early back into second. Side to side and ergonomically, it feels a lot like an R6, but it's kind of fat. It's a bit heavier than an R6, and you gotta ride the beat of the power band more than the R6, you know? You gotta make sure that you're in the right zone for the torque and not to over rev the engine. When I first rode this bike, I kept hitting the rev limiter because my brain was telling me, oh my god, these tires are smoked, man. My brain was telling me that this bike was, you know, needing to be pushed at 15,000 RPM, but actually you gotta just ride the meat of the torque because this is a naked bike engine pretty much. So all that mid-range torque is where you're gonna win with this thing. I would highly recommend an exhaust and a flash so you can hear it a little bit better. Man, I'm being so careful. I got slide control turned on and I'm still barely feeding in the gas on corner exit. These rear tires are not giving me any confidence whatsoever. But the bones are really good. I can tell that it's a really solid, really well put together machine that can do a lot. I mean, it did win on its debut in World Supersport, which is pretty cool. And Yamaha doesn't build a bad bike, man. This is a really great motorcycle. It's just not quite as hard-edged as it used to be. Squeeze that power a little bit. Bury the brakes. Take this lower line. So much less corner speed than I would on a 600 because these tires are telling me, don't do it! Don't do it! But the power's fun, the bike's fun, it's intuitive and easy to use. But, you know, in terms of being a comfortable next generation super sport, it's not all that comfortable, I have to say. On track today, you know, the torque and the ergonomics, like, you can do more laps than a 600 easily, but you're not going to be riding this motorcycle in a way that you would like that Ducati V2S. That motorcycle is just almost comically easy to ride. This is still a little bit more old school. You got to work for it a little bit more. But it is quite enjoyable to use. It just needs a bit more setup and prep. I'm a little disappointed from the stock configuration. But it still rips pretty good. Gonna hit about 130 on the back straight, I think, close to indicated. ABS grabbing a little bit there. You start to feel the start of the lever travel. But the bike's working good, man. Alright, what do you guys say we get this bike back to the studio and learn the ins and outs a little bit better?
Let's talk about the frame first. The R9 uses the MT-09's frame as a starting point, but deviates in several key areas. This frame is stiffer, yet it's 10% lighter. More specifically, it's stiffer longitudinally in order to cope with higher braking forces on track. It has a pretty serious 22.6 degrees of rake. Compare that to 24 degrees on the R6 and 24.7 degrees on the MT-09. The wheelbase measures 55.9 inches, which is an inch longer than an R7 and 1.8 inches longer than a 2020 R6. What does this mean? In theory, a quicker turn-in with that steep rake angle, but the longer wheelbase implies mid-corner stability. Yamaha also says the bike has a perfect 50-50 weight distribution. This is a true super sport setup, and I have no complaints. Yamaha did their homework. From a frame and geometry perspective, this is the real deal. Now the engine, the other most important part of the motorcycle. It's identical to the MT-09 but has revised ECU settings. It still suffers from that dreaded dead spot in second gear, as I've mentioned, but you can get that flashed and sorted out, no problem. Two areas where Yamaha differentiates this is by gearing it taller in the rear sprocket using a 43 tooth instead of a 45 tooth and using a throttle tube that actually gets to wide open 18 degrees quicker than an MT-09. The engine is mated to the same gearbox as the MT-09, with the third generation quickshifter up and down, which can be swapped to GP shift. However, you'll note that the hole must be tapped and threaded for you to utilize it, and there's no changes you need to make on the dash to accept the GP shift. And fun fact, the R9 actually borrows the curved radiator from the R1. Maybe it is a parts bin special after all. I wanted to make a quick note about this engine in relation to the R6. Yamaha's press material states that the R9's 890cc motor makes 40% more torque than the last gen R6 sold in 2020. According to Cycle World, the last gen stock R6 was dyno tested at 101 horsepower at 13,750 RPM and 42.8 foot-pounds of torque at 11,800 RPM. Since the R9 utilizes the old MT-09 engine, we can use online figures for that dyno measurement. This means that the R9 would make 107 horsepower at 9,900 RPM and 66 foot-pounds of torque at 7,000 RPM to the tire. This means more horsepower and torque across the entire rev range, but a substantially lower rev ceiling. The CP3 is a newer, more advanced, and larger capacity engine than the R6, and it shows. An area where the R9 really stands above previous R bikes from Yamaha is the braking and the front end. We have Brembo stylema calipers being pinched by a radial pull Brembo master cylinder and 320mm rotors with braided lines. This is about as good as it gets for braking setups unless you start talking about pure race applications, and I can confirm the brakes feel incredibly good for stock Yamaha brakes. If you've ever tried an R1 or an R6 bone stock on track, you know exactly how wooden and crappy stock Yamaha brakes are. In terms of tires, wheels, and suspension, the R9 comes equipped with Bridgestone's S22 from the factory and a 120/70/17 up front and a 180/55/17 out back. It's the most standard sport bike size. As I mentioned in the track portion of the video, they're serviceable for street duty, but if you're an advanced paced rider on track or a club racer, you're gonna want to swap tires immediately. The European variant of the Yamaha R9 actually gets RS11 tires as standard, which are much more appropriate for this type of bike. Why can't we have nice things in America? One very contentious point with the Yamaha R9 is the swing arm. This swing arm is totally workable for the average street rider or intermediate level track day rider. However, once you decide you want to run race rubber that's typically bigger, wider, taller, with warmers, you're gonna run into clearance issues, particularly if you decide to run different gearing that would bring the whole wheel assembly closer in. Teams are actually swapping in the Tracer 9 swing arm to get more clearance since that's homologated, but it ends up being 70mm longer. This effectively turns the bike into a dragster, and it's something you should seriously consider if you want to build a proper track motorcycle with the R9 as your platform. The wheels are the 5-spoke cast aluminum wheels, not the spin-forged lightweight wheels used on the MT-09. Yamaha's test riders actually preferred the heavier ones and found that they offered better feedback from the tire. Now up front, you get a pretty nice KYB fork with adjustment for preload, high and low speed compression, and rebound. I dialed in the front end before going to the track with an additional half turn of preload to get the proper sag measurements. Then I found a good setting for track use with the other clickers. Out back, you get a KYB shock that has a remote preload adjuster, high and low speed compression, and rebound adjustments. Using the remote preload adjuster is a breeze, and it let me very quickly set the sag for my weight on this machine. I don't know why more bikes don't just come stock with a remote preload adjuster like that. Now let's discuss the electronics and tech on this bike, and there's a lot. You get the same Bosch 6-axis IMU as the R1 on this machine. It gives you access to control the power level, traction control, slide control, wheelie control, engine brake management, back slip regulator, and brake control. You get 9 different modes with Sport, Street, Rain, 2 custom modes, and 4 track modes. My preferred settings are shown here on the dash. You can also download the Y-Track app and connect to your bike for data analysis and access to telemetry, which is pretty sweet. You can capture and study 26 different data channels. I've actually used this on other Yamahas at the Yamaha Champ School, and it's pretty trick for a stock system. It's a nice addition to an overall race/track package for people who are serious about lap time reductions. You also get cruise control as standard, along with a speed limiter mode for that module. The R9 is very well equipped for its asking price of $12,500, and best of all, no subscriptions or extra fees or extra crap you have to buy to put on the bike. You get the bike exactly as is. Oh yeah, the R9 also has this new weird turn indicator thing that Yamaha's doing. I really don't like these at all, and I just hope that they go back to the old ones. One of the weirder features about the R9 is this big hole in the middle of the bike. Aftermarket parts makers should design a cover for this hole and they will make a fortune. It is very unsightly. It's the exact same on the MT-09. It's been that way for a couple generations now. I just think it cheapens the look of the machine. Ergonomically, the bike seats a lot like an R6. It's large, substantial, and it's a motorcycle with a commanding stance. It's between something like an R1 and an R6 in that way. It has a 32.7-inch seat height. I find it reasonably roomy while I'm aboard the machine at about 5'11", weighing in at roughly 175 pounds. It's not nearly as comfortable as some of the new generation super sports, reminding me much more of serious bikes of days past. You can also adjust the foot pegs into 2 different positions, which is helpful for riders who find the rider triangle compromised or having issues with their knees. Racers and serious track day junkies are just going to swap to aftermarket rear sets with a much greater degree of adjustment anyway. Ah yes, of course, how could I forget, the bike also now has winglets. Yamaha claims it reduces wheel lift by 7% when you're hard on the gas in a straight line and 10% if you have it leaned over. Personally, I think Ducati's philosophy on this subject is correct. The bike isn't all that fast, it doesn't need winglets. I think it would have looked much more beautiful without them. The Yamaha PR team will tell you that the R9 isn't a replacement for the R6. That's obviously a load of crap, but it's also not completely untrue. The concept with this bike is to get more people excited about sport bikes. The extra torque means it feels much faster everywhere, which is exciting to riders. It makes it easier to get along with. It means riders can access more performance, making them more confident. Over the R6, it fulfills this mission to a T. It's not as bespoke, it's not as special, but it doesn't need to be. It looks cool, it's great value for money, and it makes a sweet sound too. It's spiritually closer to late 90s, early 2000s sport bikes in that they were meant to be ridden and enjoyed on road primarily. There's nothing wrong with that. And the $12,500 MSRP isn't too shabby either. I think it's telling that the R7 is currently Yamaha's best-selling model. Imagine that, selling a cheaper bike that's easier to ride sells way more of them. Street squids lament the loss of the inline 4 Super Sport, but they sure as hell are not cutting $15,000 checks out the door to buy one brand new. Look, here's the deal. Do you want to pretend like you're fast or actually be fast? The Yamaha R9 gives you that opportunity. It matches an easier to ride bike with average skill sets and technology that will make you better. You can push limits with your R6 on the street and never improve, or you can get an R9, ride faster and easier, go to the track and get even better too. An average rider can extract faster laps with the R9 than they ever could with an R6. No doubt about it in my mind. The R9 has broad linear power and it's a full-size machine that looks great. So who is it for? It's definitely for more people than the R6 ever was. I could see a guy in his 40s rekindling his love of sport bikes with this thing, primarily riding on road. I could also see a guy in his 20s upgrading from the R7 and excitedly using the triple cylinder engine, trying his hand at a few track days. I could also see a track day junkie or club racer getting his hands on this and utilizing all of the wide track capabilities and building something close to the Moto America machines or the World Supersport machines we see. I think the R9 is a true blue sport bike because it is highly functional on a racetrack, which is what the R6 did. It has the super sport energy that you can't really measure, but you can feel. But the R9 remains a paradox, simultaneously clinging on to the past while trying to be something new, hoping to appease old R6 owners and new prospective customers or those who want to upgrade from an R7. Think about it this way. The old R6 was like a Honda S2000. Pure, simple, high revs, no torque, and a classic design that works really well for racetracks. The new R9 is like a new Toyota Supra. It's comfortable, loads of torque, lots of tech, feels a little numb in comparison. I hate to use car guy analogies, but I'm trying to help you see the bigger picture for what's happening in motorcycling here. So, is it an R6 replacement, an R7 upgrade? Who can say? The R9 genuinely leaves me with more questions than answers. All I know is that it's a solid bike at a great price that looks cool. It performs well enough on track for most riders right out of the box, unless you're an A-level rider or club racer, but you obviously aren't going to keep an R9 stock if you're going to do that. But yet it's still a fun street bike. It's got great bones, and with a bit of gumption, it can be set up to be a monster on track. It won on its debut, for God's sake. It's a great jump from the R7. It's got a better dash, better components, one extra cylinder, just feels way more grown up. More tech, more features, and a decent price. It's a bike that makes way more sense for Yamaha to build than the R6, and more sense for people to buy. It's a win-win in my book. I'd rate this machine a solid 8.5 out of 10. It fulfills the promise of a real sport bike in a slightly new way. It's a bit old school in its execution, but riders who love the R6 might appreciate that. Thanks for watching today's video. I really hope you appreciated it. Let me know if you enjoy this new format of our reviews. I tried to be as thorough as possible, and if you'd like a chance to win this R9, it's a giveaway bike on my website, yammynoob.co. Click the link down below and become a member to get your best chance to win. I've given away over 66 motorcycles in my time here on YouTube, and I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. And if you made it all the way to the end, why don't you click this link and keep watching some Yammy Noob. Check out this next video right over here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.